let's start with the one that's probably closest to our hearts as we get to this colder weather. You've been working to make sure we have propane supplies.
Absolutely. You know, last year we had a crisis in the upper Midwest, and Wisconsin was particularly hard hit with critical shortages in propane supply. And of course, the laws of supply and demand would suggest that it also meant the price went through the roof. And to refill tanks midwinter because of the bitter cold, people were paying 4, 5, 6 times what they would usually pay to fill their tanks. It was almost a perfect storm of things that went wrong. We had a particularly wet harvest season, and a lot of folks in agriculture used propane to dry crops. Then we had a polar vortex, sub-zero temperatures for weeks at a time. And we had pipelines that were down for maintenance, pipelines that were usually used to ship propane, that were used for other fuels. And all of this conspired to really create a crisis. In Wisconsin, about 250,000 people heat their homes with propane, and countless businesses do. So I teamed up with a number of my colleagues on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and we said, first of all, we'd like to have hearings and find out why so many things went wrong. And was there anybody sort of in control that could have said, we see this coming, let's start coordinating and warning and all of those sort of things.
Is there a propane czar, for lack of a better term?
And what we discovered through our hearings and inquiries is there is not. And that perhaps the agency you would think most in a place to take the lead in a crisis didn't have the data at its disposal, at least on a timely enough basis, and that's the Energy Information Agency at the Department of Energy. So we had our hearing, and then we feel like we got some great recommendations from the stakeholders, whether it's the propane distribution sector, or the pipeline folks, or the Department of Energy, or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or all of the other agencies that played some role. And so we put together a bill. I'm working very closely with some other upper Midwestern senators, Al Franken from the state of Minnesota, who is Minnesota was also harshly affected by this, and Rob Portman from Ohio. So we have bipartisan legislation. We want to get it through. We want to get it through in part because I think we learned a lot from last winter. We want to make sure it never happens again.
And winter's coming.
Winter is coming.
It's on the way.
And there are those who are predicting another very cold one. One of the things that was observed during this crisis and following the crisis was that we don't have anything like a strategic propane reserve. We have a strategic petroleum reserve,
right.
But not a propane reserve. And in fact, in terms of amassing reserves in the upper Midwest, it's really our storage, the distributors, but also it's really the storage in our homes, at our farms, in our small businesses. And so in the future, we'd like to see some infrastructure in place that would permit somewhat of a reserve in our area in case there's another shortage. But in the meantime, we certainly need some other changes.